Just that's just a simple scenario to kind of consider when we get a good amount of money or anything like that. Do we go out and buy something impulsively because it's something we want? Do we look to save for our future? All right, so pay yourself first. What does it mean to pay yourself first? Basically, to pay yourself first, it means whether you're getting money from a paycheck, a gift, taxes, or any other amount of money, you want to make sure that you pay yourself first, even before you pay your bills. Now, you might ask, why would you want to pay yourself before making any purchases or paying your bills? Well, with that, if you create a budget and you put a little to the side to save for yourself, it creates a discipline with your finances. So that's why it's important to save for yourself first in a realistic manner according to your income and your budget. So in the activity worksheet, you'll see on the participant guide, there's an activity one, and we'll just go over it briefly together because everybody may not have that guide open. But this is what the guide looks like, and it's just some questions, and you could always go back to it. It's on page 9 in the participant guide. Do you have yours open, the guide open? Did you receive the guide, Johnny, by your email? Okay. All right. So basically, it's just some questions that is on the activity guide. And it just tells you to write down some things that you would like to save for, some future goals that you want financially. So that's all it's asking you to do in this short activity. So you guys can, if you feel free of sharing any goals that you may have that you haven't saved for the future, as far as financing and saving. And for me, if I had to set aside money right now to save, it would be for a purchase of a home. I'm renting right now, and I think I've grown to the place where I want to buy. And as soon as the market goes down, it's a little too high for me right now. So it's way out of my budget. But when I start saving, that is my goal, to save for a purchase of a home. Do you guys have any saving goals?
Well, I'm in the retirement mode.
Well,
In a little bit.
congratulations.
Yeah, well, in 2 more years. I said when I get 70, that's it. So that's what I'm saving for, so I can do some traveling and just, kind of like just do me. Because I don't have the babies no more. The kids are grown. That type of thing. Yeah. Oh, girl, who you telling? I started saying my dog and my cat passed.
Oh.
That was like my babies. But now that's all I'm saving for, and I find that for me, what she was saying is so true. I learned that when I was younger, that you spent 70% of your income is for your bills and stuff. That's what my mother raised me. She said the first 3 things, every time we used to get a check, when we was in we used to do, in high school, we used to do those little part-time jobs they give you. I forget, a co-op thing.
Co-op, yeah.
And I think I got like $150 every week because I was only working like 2 or 3 hours a day. And first thing my mother would say, okay, 10% went to tithing. Now, it doesn't have to be the church, but it had to be given some kind of food bank, something,
Mm-hmm.
And then 10% was for savings. No matter what I got, 10% went in. If I got $100, $10 went in the bank. I tell you, girl, there's a time when I used to go up there, I had $4.50. They would laugh at me, but I was so diligent. I wasn't making no money, so I said, oh, whatever I get. And after a period of time, you look at a year and a half later, you got $15,000. You don't even know how you got that.
Yeah.
And it's not, you don't miss it because it's part of your income. It's not like something like you say, get a gift or the income tax return. It's a different feel. And then the third part was for me. Now I can get my personal items, anything I wanted to get with that 10%. But that's how my mother raised us. And then the 70% naturally had to go to her because I was a kid. But I learned that lesson, and in times of my life when I was struggling, even like now, I say 10%. If enough, I can put more, but at least 10%. And you believe you don't miss it.
Yeah. If you do it first, you don't.
You don't, because if you spend, let's say you get $100, say not what you're gonna spend for coffee or tea or whatever. Anyway, that's 10%. Take that 10% and say it don't exist. It just does not exist. There's no option. My mother had bank accounts. We couldn't go get it. We didn't have no piggy bank. Was the money from the 10%, and we saved in our own piggy bank, but it was nothing extra. So that's kind of where I learned my discipline from. But that's what I'm saving for now. I'm saving to just relax and do. I don't want to own nothing.
Well, that's good.
Because I'm not trying to fix nothing.
Right.
I'm too old to. You buy a house and there's always something. Sometimes down the line, the ceiling's gonna drop, the water heater gonna go. I don't want to do nothing. I just want to.
I am with you.
I don't want it.
I understand it completely, and that's a very, very good practice to have. And we were raised very similar, so that is it. I think it's a good practice to have. Does anybody else have any savings goals that they want to share with us? Anybody?
It's just medical stuff. You never know when you're going to get sick and the health system.
Yes. That is a very important one, actually. Very, very important. So those are all good goals. And like Joanne said, when it comes down to considering the little bit of money that we have, we don't realize. I am a Starbucks junkie. If they had a AAA meeting for Starbucks, I would go because I have that habit. And you don't realize the $4.95 adds up pretty quickly when you're going a few times a week. And then I typically don't go with myself. I go with my daughters and my husband, and it adds up. So those little expenses, you can go to Walmart and buy a bag of coffee, make far more coffee than just getting one $4 cup, $5 cup at Starbucks. So if you change those little habits, you can end up putting that money in savings. Cut off little subscriptions. Like if you go through, a lot of banks now have where you have an option where you can look at things that you are subscribed to. Because often we don't look at our bank statements and realize $1.99 is coming out for this, or $4.99 is coming out for that. And there's a way to go through and check those subscriptions. Is it really necessary that we're paying extra money for subscriptions? $1.99 doesn't seem like much, but it adds up over time. If you've paid that every month for the last 4 or 5 years, not realizing, it ends up being a good amount of money that has been used for something that could have been beneficial somewhere else in your life. So Joanna made a great point. And again, that activity is just like a little thing you could go back and look in your participant guide. And I think I went too far on the slide. I clicked it too many times, so I actually have to go back on the slide. So those that are viewing here online, I skipped some slides. My finger kept touching too much. So I am going to pause this briefly, if you would allow me, so I could go back and correct my screen. I was just getting happy there and just typing in person and didn't realize. All right. I think we fixed it. And that brings us to talk about how your money can grow. Joanna made a great point when she said that if you had the $100 and you save 10 and over time, it builds, which is very true. So interest is the amount of money that banks or other financial institutions pay you for the money that you deposit with them. So interest is expressed as a percentage. It's calculated based on the amount of money that you have in the account. And if you save money the old-fashioned way, like in a can under the mattress, I had a grandmother that she had this old coffee can, and when she grew ill, she told my dad, grabbed the can, and we're like, that can been sitting there for 30 years. Granny had like $8,000 in that can, and it's like, whoa, we've been trying to find $25 here and there, But that was her way of saving. She was in her 80s. She was like 86, and that was her way of saving. And right there in her windowsill, she had $8,000 in an old coffee can. This coffee can was so old, my dad had to get pliers to pry the top off. That's how it wasn't even, the coffee cans have a little plastic lid.
Mm-hmm.
This one it was a metal lid that you had to jam in there. So he had to get a little screwdriver and pliers and pull it up. That's how old that coffee can was. So, it's good to save, but that is when you're saving in that old fashioned manner, you have different risks. You have risk of somebody coming to take that little coffee can. We went in there actually to clean her room, and that coffee can was going to get tossed. We was going to throw the coffee can away, and that's why she told my dad to make sure he got it. And then we found a little pistol under her pillow. It was so funny. It was like, Granny, what are you doing? $8,000 in a pistol at 86 years old. It was like, Granny, that was the cutest thing I've ever seen.
I like her. Yeah, that's my granny.
And then compound interest that's how your money can grow. It's again just a type of interest that the bank, it kind of is like a reward for keeping the money in the bank. So interest is important to know when you are looking at savings with a financial institution. And then now I'm not clicking at all. All right. So annual percentage yield, the APY, when you go and you look at a bank or savings account or different types of saving products, you'll hear the APY. And that's basically the amount of interest you earn on a yearly basis. It includes the compounding effects of compounding interest. And you want to make sure that you compare those products when you're looking at savings, because often if you don't learn about it and read the different products, you may not be getting the best product for your situation or your goals. So they have this thing called the Rule of 72. The Rule of 72 is a formula that lets you estimate how long it'll take you for saving double in value. So the formula basically is the number 72 divided by the interest rate, and that will equal the number of years that it takes you to get to your goal. So say, for instance, you're taking 72 and you're dividing it by an interest rate of 4, that'll mean 18 years you'll reach your goal. So you kind of want to learn the rule of 72, because that will help you figure out what you need for your goals as far as savings is concerned. And that also is in your participant guide. So there's different types of saving products. Saving products include savings account, money market deposit accounts, and certificates of deposit. So we probably heard of that, the CDs. And you want to know the difference when you're going in there trying to open up a savings account. And again, it's just like a reward for good behavior or keeping your money secure and safe. And you always have easy access to it. So the CDs, the certificate, the money market deposit accounts often offer higher interest rates than savings account. And they also give you check writing privileges, which CDs usually don't. But they always have a term, and that's basically the amount of time that is, say for instance, you can have a term of 5 years, a term of 6 months, and you want to make sure that when you're going to look at these savings products, you find out what the penalty is, if there is any penalty associated, if you want to withdraw money before that term is over, because you don't want to give the bank any money, that we want to save money. So we want to try to avoid extra fees if we can. And that brings us to activity 2. And activity 2, it can be seen on page 15 in the participant guide. And this is just another questionnaire, and my screen's too little, I can't read it. Let me see here. Let's see. All right. So the first question says, you have about $500 and you want to withdraw money, or excuse me, and you do not want to withdraw money for at least a year. So after the year is up, this is, I should start over, I'm sorry. This is asking you to select the best product for the scenario. So the savings products, the CD, the savings account, or the money market deposit account. So this is just asking you to say which of these scenarios will best fit the activity or the scenario. So the first question says you have about $500 you want to put to a side, and you don't need to withdraw the money for at least a year. You want to place it in an account that earns you higher interest rate than a regular savings account. What would that be? A CD, savings account, or money market deposit account? Well, you're wanting to leave it there and make no withdrawals. So that'll be the CD. Because it's a term, that's right. The second one is you received $100 for your birthday and you want to start saving money. What would be the best scenario to start saving $100? Would you want to use we already said CD, so savings account or your money market deposit account? $100, and you want to deposit that for a savings. So that's just a regular savings account.
I must have went out, but what's the money market?
The money market deposit account, that is, it's just another type of savings, but it is it offers a higher interest rate than savings account, and you can have check writing privileges on a money market account. So if you have the amount of money in there, you can, during the time, you can write checks and receive money, and as opposed to a CD, you have a term. And if you withdraw in the CD before the term is up, then you're penalized.
Right.
Yeah, you have to pay a
want to make
certain.
sure because I didn't register with that one.
The money, yeah, a good question. And then the third question on activity 2 is your parents have $3,000 they'd like to deposit. They want to open up an account that provides higher interest rates than a savings account, and they also want to be able to write checks from this account. That's your money market deposit account. And again, that is on page 15 in the participant guide. You could always go back and look at that little activity, and it does give little explanations of each deposit account and things like that for you to learn a little bit more. So we know that those are deposit investment products, but then there's also non-deposit investment products. And so for the purposes of this financial class, when we hear investment, we're just because investment can mean different things in different places and for different things. So investment for this purpose of this class is just a long-term savings option that you purchase for future income or financial benefit. So while some investment products are sold at banks, they're not the same as deposit accounts because the money you invest is not federally insured. So when you invest money, it's a greater risk of losing when you invest with a non-deposit account than it would be with a deposit account. When you do it with a bank that is FDIC insured, the money that you deposit is just that you are assured that money back if something was to happen to that money. If the bank goes out of business, if little hacking goes on. Wells Fargo had a big
Yes.
scam going on some years ago where a lot of customers' money was breached, or their accounts were breached, but that money was protected because it's an FDIC bank. So if you go to the little community banks and you don't see that FDIC symbol there, I personally would not go, because that's just like trusting a relative or a neighbor with your money.
FBI.
Yeah, FDIC, you want to make sure it's always an FDIC insured institution. That's very important if you want to protect your money and assets. So the types of investment products include stocks, bonds, mutual funds, U.S. Treasury Securities, and retirement investments. So that would be the one that you would want to learn more about, is that retirement, Giovanni.
Yes. Well,
That's so important.
You know, I got stuck with
Yes, it's right here.
it's I had a problem. I learned all my little lessons. It's like the interest you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned also just be careful because it doesn't sound like a lot when you're doing it because you want the money.
Right.
So 19% don't sound, I mean, it's a big thing, but don't sound like that because right now I'm getting my money 18 years down the line. You know what I'm saying? But then you don't know life happens.
It
While
does.
it's going on, you still got to pay that back at 19%.
Life definitely
So-
happens.
And it costs you more to pay it back than it would if you just did it, you know, on like a layaway thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I learned that lesson, child. I'm still paying the government back. And I learned that all I had been doing was paying the interest. I hadn't even
Been
touched the
paying the
principal.
principal.
I took a student loan for $6,000 out. That's all it was. And the school went out of business because the school went out of business for fraudulent activity. So I fought the IRS because, you know, it's fraudulent. That means they stole the money.
Right.
So because I had signed that paper, they came after me.
Yeah.
And so I started paying them, but I really didn't have a lot of money to pay. So then I just started letting them take it from my income tax return. Well, guess what? It's 1990s when I took it out. Do you know they still coming after me for that money? And they went up to $24,000 interest.
Wow.
And I had to fight them to get it back down to where, and it was only $6,000 loan. So I learned my lesson on that though. I mean, just be real careful about that interest because
Very careful.
if you pay minimum, all that is interest.
Yeah.
You ain't touched the principal.
And that's
30
very
years.
true. When people
32
do those payday loans
Mm-hmm.
and things like that, even if you're paying a high interest rate on a vehicle, if you look at it, by the time you're done paying a 5 or 7 year loan off, if you have a high interest rate, you've probably paid $15,000 to $16,000 or more over that time for only interest. So when you look at your statements, when you're making payments on loans and credit cards, if you look at your statement, most things will show what was actually applied to the principal. So there are it's like 18 cents. there are little tricks that you can do, even if you have a high interest rate. You always have the ability to try to refinance, but of course you don't want to try to refinance if your credit hasn't improved. But then there's always the ability to pay extra, and you want to tell them that you want to apply it directly to the principal. And if you make your payments early, that actually, so say for instance, a good trick is if you have a payment that's due on the 1st of the month, or I'll start the 15th of the month. If you have a payment that's due on the 15th of the month, if you pay it on the 15th and have the ability to pay again on the 1st, and then begin paying every month on the 1st, opposed to the 15th, believe it or not, those 14 days, it will cut some of the interest down because you're paying it a little earlier.
Okay.
And
If
you can see that difference when you have a higher interest rate on different products. So we'll talk a little bit about stocks. Stocks is just basically where you buy a stock and you own a part of the company, which would be called a share. And the company, when that company does financially well, then you will receive dividends or a portion of that company's product. So you can invest in stock at like Starbucks, Walmart, It would probably be best to get stock in like Amazon, because Amazon is always high with the stock and stuff like that. So a lot of people do invest in stock because, again, it's kind of like this money that you can randomly get if you do that initial investment. But the thing with stocks is your investment can change. It can go up and down according to the stock market and where that company is at that time. So I personally have never, and I invested in stocks with a company that I was working with that offered it to employees. And outside of that, I never invested in stocks because I never took the time to actually learn about the stock market. Um, so I would suggest if you do stocks, you want to learn about stocks in the stock market prior to investing to make sure that you have an understanding when it goes up and down.
A friend of mine did penny stocks when it first came out,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not telling you a lot. This guy took, what is it? He said it's a penny, right? He took $1. Serious. He put like 10 cents on 10%. Just because he didn't, he heard penny stock, and I'm gonna try this, see if it works. So he took $1 and put 10 cents on each one.
On 10 different stocks.
On 10 different stocks, and 2 of them hit. But it's never been like $1 million he's made. But
Right.
Could you imagine if he only invests 10 cents? So if it's worth $200 right now, he still won.
Exactly.
So that's kind of how he experimented. He got me. Now he's into stocks. I mean, he's really learned some stuff. He go on the internet, and there's a couple guys on the internet that teach stocks. But I just was amazed. I said, that's a good idea. Start with some penny stock and see how it goes.
Right.
You invest in new companies.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine he had one who had been Amazon
Right.
for 10 cents?
And he would have been somewhere by now.
So I think that's a good thing.
It is. And it's good to, if you're investing and you don't know much about it, I would recommend to invest a small amount prior to going big. Because if the company fails, then your initial investment can be jeopardized and you could essentially lose your investment.
That's right.
So outside of the stocks, there's bonds, and bonds is where you can buy a bond, and when you're lending money to a corporation for a certain amount of time, which is called a term, and that corporation promises to repay you the amount of money that was lended on a specific date in the future. So, like you could do a $50 bond, but then you can't get the $50 until maybe 3 to 5 years. I set up bonds for my children. I think they were probably in 8th grade. 7th and 8th grade, I set up bonds for my daughters, and it was a small investment for each of them. It was $500 for both of them. So again, this was 7th and 8th grade. They are now a freshman and sophomore in college. And when my oldest one was a freshman in college, she hit me with $14,000 of tuition, like, hey, here it is. And I'm like, whoa, what are we gonna do? But that bond, it was issued the term was up when she turned 18. And I was able to use that bond money to pay her first year tuition in college. So it does add up. And it was the craziest thing because I did it so long prior. I was like, $500. We're still struggling. We need $13,000 more. But the maturity of that bond had increased so much, I was actually able to take care of her first year's tuition. So it does pay off in the long run. If you don't have to have an emergency situation where you have to go into that. But if you were to get a $50 bond or whatnot and you don't let the term play out, you probably won't even get those $50 back. They penalize you. So you'll end up with $25 of the $50 you invested if you don't complete the term. So there is ups and downs to it, as in anything. But for me, it did pay off. Just because it just happened to work out that way. And that brings us to mutual funds. Mutual funds is a product that combines money from many investors to purchase numerous separate investments. So we look at to diversify. That means that spreads your risk of loss across many savings options for investments. All right, let's talk about U.S. Treasury Securities. So U.S. Treasury Securities, you'll hear Treasury bills, Treasury notes, Treasury inflation protected securities, Treasury bonds. And to get a Treasury security, the minimum purchase is $100. And that is one of those things that is backed by the government as well. So those are Treasury securities is one of those things that are like for people that have a great amount of money to invest. So I won't go into great detail about the U.S. Treasury securities and things like that. But it is in the participant guide. It is always good to learn about it because it's important. You never know. One day we may all be sitting millionaires. That's my goal. I don't know about anybody else, but I would love to be there. And then retirement investments. So retirement investments are just products that help you save towards retirement. There's different types of retirement investments. You could always have your own personal retirement investments where you're saving a certain amount for retirement. And then through employers and things like that, you have your individual retirement arrangements, which are known as IRAs. Mm-hmm. And then they have the 401k and the 403b plans, and those are again offered through employers. And those get a little tricky when it comes down to different organizations and different employers. So I always ask when I get a different job, I always ask what the benefit package is. I always ask about the retirement plan because some employers will trick you, or maybe it's not trick, maybe it's misinformed or don't inform. And when you are putting towards your retirement, it actually can come out of your paycheck, and you don't realize that you are personally paying into your own retirement, which is good. But I don't want a company to tell me how to invest in the retirement. I want to be able to make that decision. So some companies will set a certain percentage if you select a certain retirement plan. So you always want to look at that and ask about those benefits when you are going into a new job or with an employer. It's always good to invest, but it's always better to learn about what you're investing and look at all your options. You don't want to just see. I know a lot of people that will take the option that may not cost as much, but it may not be the best option for their situation or their finances. Everybody makes a different amount of money in a job typically, and they have different, somebody may have child support, somebody may have a different withholding on their taxes. So even if you and I make the same amount of money hourly, I could be working part-time, you could be working full-time, so our checks may not be the same. But if you have a great plan for your retirement where you're personally taking out a certain percentage as a full-time employee making the same amount of money, it may not be as beneficial for me as an employee working full-time making the same amount of money, because now I'm going to be way shorter on my paycheck. And again, the IRAs, that can include a combination of products, and IRAs are tax exempt. So that is helpful to know for a lot of people because tax exempt is good. Who wants to pay taxes? Who wants to pay additional? If you're investing, right? If you've earned money, typically you've already paid taxes on that, or should have. And so when you invest, you don't want to pay taxes on that money again. So it's good to know that IRAs are tax exempt. But those again, there's traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs. So you can look in the participant guide and learn the difference between those two. And then the 401ks again is established by your employer. The 403b is offered to employees, and that is usually from nonprofit organizations or government organizations. More than likely, like school board offers the 403. All right, so variable annuities, that's basically just an insurance contract that invests your premium in various mutual fund like investments. That can be variable annuities is it's costly. So it may not be beneficial for everybody to seek or get into those. And then we have another activity, and it's just another brief one. Because we are drawing close to time, I'm going to skip that activity, and that is on, let me see what page that's on the participant guide. It looks like it's on page 23 or 24. And it's just an activity that goes over those investment products, and it asks you questions and wants you to say which product is best fitting for that scenario, like we did in the other activity. All right, so special saving programs, IDAs is individual development accounts, and it's a match savings account for your job, training, education, business startup, or home down payment. So IDA, if you invest a certain amount, it matches. 529 college savings plan is always good to do. I started one for my kids with an initial investment of $50 for each of them, and it does add up over time. So I did $50, and then out of every paycheck, I felt like it was so bad because I only did $5 for each. I had 3 children, so I did $5 each paycheck for them. Again, I started at 7th and 8th grade for my kids, and that $5 every other week. It sounds like it's not a lot of money, but over the next 5 years, it significantly adds up with the interest rate. So $5 does not sound like a lot for investing, but it does add up over time, especially when you have it combined with interest. So it's worth it. So I always tell people, it's better to save $5 than no dollars. Even if I have this thing on my checking account, and it's offered by many banks now. But what happens is, say for instance, I'm in Publix and I spend $18.75. My bank will automatically round it up to $19, and then the 25 cents goes into my savings account. So each month, it's kind of like a keep the change savings. So each month, I do it I get a report every week because I'm just anxious to know like that. Like I think I've done the good thing, right? So each week, like on our weeks where we are doing a lot of household spending and doing our grocery shopping and stuff like that, I look at my transfer to savings, and I'm saving just from the keep the change. I'm averaging about $27 to $40 here and there a week, in just keeping the change. And because sometimes you could spend $19.02, so 98 cents is going to round up. But the way I swipe my card, we're saving a lot of change, and it adds up over the week.
What's that called?
It's called Keep the Change Savings. And there are plenty institutes that offer it. I know Bank of America does, and it's a very, and it does it for you. So it's like you're not even thinking about it. It just automatically does it when you're spending. And I just like to see the report, because sometimes you're not disciplined in saving. So it's like, I saved $18.55 this week. So it makes a difference, and it's easy because it does it for you. Then there's another activity, and again, because of time, I'm going to let you all look at the participant guide. That's on page 27 for that activity. And basically, it's just wanting you to look at some decision factors when you're selecting savings and investment products that's best for you in your situation. So it looks like it's kind of basic when you're looking at the participant guide. And the thing is, it is basic, and basic is better because if you look at doing anything in life, algebra or any type of anything, if you don't know 2 plus 2, how are you going to be able to complete other math problems in the future? So when it comes down to financial literacy, as I do offer more in-depth courses with trying to do credit and budgeting and things like that, where it actually can be surrounded individually more to an individual in their situation. The basics of financial literacy will give you a foundational understanding, because what usually happens is we're not taught about investing, we're not taught about banking, we're not taught. Kids anymore, when we were doing financial literacy or any type of thing in school, they made us sit down with accounting and do a ledger and balance a checkbook. Kids don't even learn cursive in school anymore, and they're not learning those basics of money management even in school anymore, unless they sign up for elective accounting class. So what happens is we start working early. I started working at the age of 14. And when you start working at the age of 14, my only goal was to buy some Gary Payton shoes. That was my only goal. I was a basketball player, and Gary Payton dropped them glove shoes. And I asked my dad, can he buy them? He said no. He had 14 feet that he had to put shoes on, and he couldn't afford $120 shoes because there were 7 of us growing up. So I was like, man. So I asked him, could I get a job? My only goal when I started working at the age of 14 was to purchase Gary Payton shoes. And I did. I started working at Papa John's, and I bought the shoes, and then now I created a habit, because when I got my next paycheck, and it was the craziest thing, my paycheck working part-time was like 35 cents more than those shoes cost. So I was like, I'm getting the shoes. Ain't got 35 cents to spare. And but then when I got my next check, I wanted Jordan. When I got my next check, I wanted some other person's shoes. And I created a habit. And here I am a few years later, and I still have a bad shoe habit. I still have a bad spending habit on shoes. Now I'm smarter, and I'll go clearance and I'll go whatever to make it fit my lifestyle and my budget. But I created a habit at the age of 14 that I still haven't been able to completely break, because now I have a fetish of buying shoes. I did that to myself, but nobody was there to stop me and to tell me, because my mom and dad seen it as, it's your money you're earning. Spend it how you need. Now, my dad did have the whole tithing thing. We had to do that. Gary Payton got the first set of ties, though. We missed it on the first lesson. But, when you create those habits and you get into the work life and you start earning money, you earn it, you spend it, life hits. And I've heard people say all the time, and I've even said it, my money was gone before it came. Because on the first, your bills are coming up. Your car payment's going to be due. And you can calculate, okay, I'm going to get $1,000. And before the $1,000 reaches your hand or your account, you've already calculated in your mind all your outstanding debts that you need to pay. But with that, create a budget, sit down and look at your bills each month, and be reasonable. When I did it, I was very tight with creating my budget, because I wanted to leave a little extra cushion over here for my little spending. So when you do your budget, be practical, be realistic. And if you look at your average over your bills in the last 3 months, is a good rule of thumb to average out your bills, because often your light bill and if you have gas, it's not going to be the same amount each month. Like you have a water bill of $125, the next month it might be $70. But you don't want to take the lower one and say, okay, I need to budget $70 for my water bill. That might not be helpful. Be practical when you're creating your budget. And once you create your budget, compare it to your income, because your budget and your spending with your obligations need to be able to match your income, your household income. And once you create that budget, create your plan. And it is good to always put a small portion in your budget. You want to not just add your rent or mortgage, your car payment, your insurance payment. I have a bill spreadsheet, Microsoft or the Excel spreadsheet. I have one, and I calculate my paychecks. I enter it in, and Excel is a very good tool because it calculates everything for you. You don't have to pull out the old school calculator and do the math. It's very, very helpful. So I enter my income, I enter my husband's income. And when we're looking at that, it shows us, okay, we have this amount of money each month for income coming in. And then we calculate the bills for the month. And then it tells us this little total in Excel. So they're so convenient, it'll tell you how much you have left over to spend. But in that budgeting, we put savings, and we put a certain amount of savings. And when my check comes, you made a great point earlier in the workshop, Joanne, when you said do it first. So when my check comes, just like the IRS gets their little income tax, my savings accounts gets that savings amount that I preset to the side. Even if it's $25, it's so beneficial to do it. You never know when you're gonna get a flat tire, for one. You never know when just life can happen or things can come up. So that initial savings, if you get it over to a savings first, like she said, you usually don't miss it. But you always want to make sure that you've created a great budget prior, so all your obligations can be covered and you don't find yourself into a financial mess or financial burdens.
Can I say something too?
Mm-hmm.
Now you're using it from the job, career. My experience is through entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, I've only had 2 real jobs, in my whole life. I mean, where I had 401k and I would work every day, because I was always like that. I didn't like working for people, so I worked for Transit, which was a really good job, and I did that, and then I worked for this other guy here. So most of my experience or my, like you said, routine, my whole routine is daily, because it's whatever I make that day as an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. Like even today, even when I was working with MHI, you know what I'm saying? It was like, okay, we got this is what we did, we got that day paid, you know what I'm saying? To me, that was just like doing it daily. Now I take that money and took 10% automatically, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Went into the thing, and then the other 70% is what I started to live off of. And what I found out is that once you do that and you don't think about that other, you still save with that 70% some kind of way. And I am a budgeter, not a budgeter, not a budget, what do you call it? Thrifter. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? I'm a thrifter, honey.
Not my shoes, but I thrift everything.
Everything, shoes. Because I have the same similar thing. When I was like 8, my mother said to us, kids, I don't know you remember back there, I'm talking 50s, 60s, and I need some kids. And kids was only like $30, $40. For us, that was a lot of money. Right. And my mother said to us, I will match whatever you make. Because I don't have $30. Mm-hmm. So if you make 15 for the summer, and that's how every summer, we would go out and start a business of some kind of our own. Maybe not a business, but sell something, create something, right? Whatever. So that's how my experience with that is. So I get what you're saying. It's just like just develop a routine mm-hmm. of some sort that helps you to save, whether it be IRAs. Well, putting in, I like the part where you put $5 in a movie, because to me that makes sense. Because I'm not gonna miss $5, right? But I'll miss $50. See, my mother always say, do never put more money in the bank than you will go and borrow. For a fact you can put $10 and not touch it, but if you put $100 in there, you're going back because the bill's gonna get paid. So don't put $100. Just put the $10, mm-hmm. and then the next week just put another 10, because you're not gonna miss it. But if you put a lot of money in it, you know what I'm saying, you have a tendency to go back because you need that money. You know what I'm saying? It's not extra. So I totally get it, but like I said, I guess my point is, like you said, just be consistent mm-hmm. and create some kind of a plan that works for you.
And I do, I go through, and I haven't done it in a while, so I am going to, I'm going to do it again, but I have done where I created, well, I call it Odessa challenge, but that's just because it's me. But I will stop doing my little habits for a certain amount of time. So it's like a sabbatical, a spending sabbatical, right? Where I'm not going to Starbucks every other morning and getting coffee.
When does this happen?
I said it's been a while. It's been a while since I've done it. And I'll do it for 2 weeks or I'll do it for a month. And every time I get the desire to go to Starbucks, I will put those $5 to the side. And one time I wasn't as disciplined. So what I would do was I would go into Starbucks, I would buy a gift card. I would go into Walmart and I would buy a gift card. And let me tell you, for like 3 Christmases straight, I was able to gift card my whole kid's Christmas. And then it's like, where in the world did you get all those gift cards from? And it's like, I bought them all year because I would literally go into the store. It's like, okay, I don't need this today. And then I would just, add up, it's
This is the point of
insane.
spending. You just, it's such a habit of
I'm
spending.
telling you,
But that
if
makes
you
sense.
do, if
I
you
like
do
that.
that,
I
if
like
you were to,
I like that. That's a good idea.
if you even start now with it being April, I guarantee every time you get an impulse to run into Walmart, and Walmart is probably the worst place to get you to buy extra stuff that you absolutely don't need. You can go in there and you can go in there for a light bulb and come out with a basket full of stuff you just don't need. But if you have impulse, which everybody does for one reason or another, everybody has some type of impulse. And I would get to the register, I would put all my because anybody that knows me knows that I'm a snacker, I'm an eater. I always have food surrounded by me somewhere close by. But I will stop and I would, instead of spending those $10, $15 on snacks, which I typically do, I will buy a gift card. And I'm telling you, it adds up.
I like that.
It adds up so
that.
much. And I literally had a index card, a little box that you keep index cards in. And at the end of the year, I always end up with a significant amount of gift cards to different places. And it's just crazy, amazing how it adds up. And that's just another thing. It was always helpful as a single mom. It was always helpful because I had these gift cards. Little stuff will happen. My kids will need, shoes for track. And it's like, oh my God. And then all of a sudden, it's like, okay, I got to put like a gift card. It's crazy, crazy amazing how it will pay you back in the future if you just stop impulse buying, even if it's for a short period of time. So, does anybody have any feedback, questions, anything else to share before we do our goodbyes and close the workshop? I hope we're still connected over here. I haven't checked it. So I don't know if we're even still connected here online virtually. Okay. All right. So with that, we basically just learned about savings and different products and stuff like that. Our next workshop will be the second Saturday of next month. I think it's the 14th. And it'll be back here in the same location. And again, to be a review online. So we look forward to seeing you. I want to make sure I get you over the participant guide and then sign you up for different classes in other programs if you'd like. All right. Well, thank you guys for coming.
Very interesting.
And it's so good to see you, Joanne.
Same here. We still keep doing our thing.
Yes. And you are not close to 70 years retired.
Yes, I am. I'm 68. 68, baby. Just made it. St. Patty's Day.
Dang.
I had to go back and
Long way to go.
look. I had to go back and look at myself. Wait a minute. What were you doing, girl?
Long way to
I
go.
was like, what?
I have a long way
So
to
is
go.
everything shut off on the different streets?
Mine.
So I'm totally confused. Hi, Maribel. It's good to see you. Do you know anybody? Yeah, Maribel was originally a scholar, fresh out of high school. Is now all grown up. Finished part of college on
Hi,
her way
thanks
back
for
to nursing
joining.
school and just finished mind body training. And